I love all y'all, all right? But I have a favorite in this group, all right? I'd like to invite Monica Clark Robinson to come forward and light our chalice.
My favorite is Finn, but don't tell Greg. May this flame, symbol of transformation since time began, fire our curiosity, strengthen our wills, and sustain our courage as we seek what is good within and around us. And now, if you'll please join me in the affirmation of covenant that's printed in your order of service, saying, "Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other."
The hallmark of our time is how transparently it reveals the world's abundant, ubiquitous complexity. The intricacies of climates and ecosystems, economies and trade, peacemaking and peacekeeping, and free institutions and elections have all become visible, painfully so, seeming also chaotic as their delicate balances wobble under various stresses and shocks. Of course, this is not the first occurrence of such times. Some of us here have lived through previous ones, like the contentious years before 9/11, or we have grown up with narratives of the disruptions of the Depression and overseas wars before Pearl Harbor. After those great shocks, though, 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, we tend to forget such unraveling times. The great shocks interrupt them, set new conditions. Our wrestle with unravelings is also interrupted, our attention focused on the new conditions. The lessons of the unraveling times go half or unabsorbed. So I want to take some time this morning to focus on the lessons that unraveling, seemingly chaotic times teach. Above all, they offer lessons in the dangers of allowing ourselves to be grounded in fear. Chaos invokes deep, even primal human fears. They feel so urgent that we are tempted to let them influence our decisions and actions. And when many around us do seem to live from their fears, it can become prudent to consider and protect ourselves from potential dangers they may pose. Fear thus causes an unraveling of the love of neighbors that we all depend on, that democracy depends on. And so today we see groups like Braver Angels leading rehearsals in the skills for connecting across differences and disagreements, hoping to get us all back in touch with the virtues of neighborliness. And that might just be the most important work we can do right now for democracy. That we can lack confidence in such work is understandable. These days it's easy to believe some folks are unreachable, or if we do seem to reach them, they'll be unreliable. So we need reassurance. Maybe it's reassuring that we don't need to reach everybody, just enough folks to hold the line against chaos. But it can also help to know that what looks like chaos often is just complexity. That there is an order in this mess. And if we look carefully, we might begin to see its traces. Once upon a time, in 1852, Thomas Starr King, a minister ordained both in the Universalist and Unitarian faiths, gave a lecture called The Laws of Disorder, with a purpose, as he put it, to show how laws wind into regions of nature and society that we never conceive of as subject to a plan or a purpose, but rather as chaotic, or at any rate, at loose ends. I don't know about you, but with that phrase, at loose ends, I feel reassured already. What he talked about in that lecture was statistics, a science just coming to popular notice at that time. Its basic concepts, the normal curve, the method of least squares, those kinds of things, were developed just after the turn of the 19th century, and their use to describe natural and social phenomena took off after the 1830s, when the American Statistical Association and its British counterpart were formed. So to his audience, statistics was cutting-edge science, a strange new way to look at the world. He gave examples of the patterns and ranges of variation that statistics revealed, of balance in nature that was invisible in daily life. Now, statistics, as you may know, both recognized and hid its limits in the concept of statistical error. Using data observed and measured by some chosen method, one could use statistics to relate changes in one phenomenon to changes in another phenomenon. It didn't prove that the changes here caused changes there, just that they appeared to move in a related pattern that could be expressed approximately by a mathematical equation. The discrepancy between what the equation predicted and the actual measurements was dubbed statistical error. One might refine the equation to make that error smaller, but it never fully went away, because reality is more complex than that equation. Now, about 20 years ago now, scientists finally buckled down and tried to analyze complexity. The press dubbed the project chaos theory, even before there was really a theory there. Articles quoted scientists saying that the theory was in development. They were looking at what they called chaotic systems, and the prime example they cited was the weather. From this project, we got the popular notion you might have heard of, that a butterfly flapping its wings in Malaysia or somewhere could cause a hurricane far, far away, say in Mexico. The first step in this project was to recognize that the equations used in statistical predictions described what they called closed systems. They only described the things observed and measured. Statistical error arose because the world we observe is an open system. Things we didn't measure interacted with the things we did measure. For example, in economic theory, my undergraduate major and pet peeve now, you know, you make this decision, we're about to start discerning, you're in for a lot of economics. You already know you're in for history. You know, if that worries you, discern about it. So, in economic theory, there are various notions that serve to paper over statistical error, to cover gaps in the theory. A famous one is ceteris paribus, all other things being equal. The economy being an open system, that's never going to be the case. Many a fantasy might be called a theory if you follow it up with all other things being equal. A similar dodge is found in the theory of the firm, the concept of externalities. This one is particularly toxic, literally, because the things often dubbed externalities include pollution, environmental damage, and social impacts of or on the firm. This sort of thing caused me to lose interest in economics even as I was completing my degree in it. The chaos theory scientists who now call it complexity theory, if you want to be reassured, they identified 4 forms of order and a paradigm for each. First, there is order like a pendulum, a system that when disturbed returns to a stable condition. If you set it going, eventually the pendulum stops swinging. Second, there is order like a mainspring. In a pendulum clock, a mainspring keeps the pendulum swinging. It sustains a repeated process, at least until the spring winds down. Third, there's order like a dog in a fenced backyard. Did you ever think of that as order? Scientifically speaking. This stability is neither a state, like the stopped pendulum, nor a process, like the continuing pendulum, but a confinement. The dog's behavior, they say, is a confined, cyclical process with erratic repetitions. There are things dogs like to do or need to do. That's where the repetitions come from. And they have some discretion in how to go about them. There's even room here for externalities, like the mailman coming by. But the fence is defined as something the dog can't jump over. The dog's processes are confined. Now, finally, there's order like the weather, or like a river. You never step into the same river twice, the ancient philosopher Heraclitus said. It is a stable, confined process without repetitions. Never step in the same one twice, no repetitions. The river flows, that's the stable process, always in a valley, that's the confinement. It might flood the valley, but it is confined there. And the water flow doesn't cycle back through the river, but keeps on going, no repetitions. Meanwhile, water may cycle back into the river through evaporation and rain, right? That's a process separate from the river. So something outside the system is interacted as an open system. Okay. Likewise, the weather stays on our planet, never does the same thing twice, and is affected by external things like the sun. In this type of order, what happens next is determined much more by what's happening now than by anything that happened before. Many students of complexity theory think that human history is such a system. That's why we can say, perhaps, that history doesn't repeat itself, historians merely repeat each other. What makes order in such confined, open systems is communication and connection. That's what order is made of in these systems. There is no simple equilibrium and no symmetry to it. And whether the order is just or not is a separate question. It is what it is. It's holding together in this shape, this form. There is room in it for intentional action, for creating conditions now. The most important conditions are the conditions now, and we create conditions now that will bend the order of things toward justice. And here's the best news for unraveling times like ours. This complex order has its best chance to change its form and its balance when it is at the edge of chaos. Not in it, at the edge. Unraveling, apparently chaotic times hold the greatest possibilities and the most responsive relationships. Now really is the best time for all of us to come together to make a difference. Back when statistics was first taking off, specifically in 1837, told you about history thing, William Ellery Channing, called the founder of American Unitarianism, addressed the Unitarian Sunday School Society. Part of what he said is in reading number 652 in the gray hymnal. 652. He spoke of the goal of religious education as not to make children see with our eyes, but to look inquiringly and steadily with their own. Not to form an outward regularity, like a pendulum. No, to touch inward springs. He was really on the right track from the perspective of complexity. It is what we give to these unraveling times, not what we get from them, that matters most. Similarly, in times similar to our own, with war and pandemic and unsettling new science and political resentments all very much in public consciousness, James Barrie, the creator of Peter Pan, gave the 1922 commencement address to new students at Scotland's St. Andrews University. What he said to them is also a message for today. Let me tell you some of what he told them. Someone said that God gave us memories so that we might have roses in December. Isn't that beautiful? He says, but I do not envy the great ones. In my experience, and you may find in the end it is in yours also, the people I have cared for most and who have seemed most worth caring for, my December roses, have been very simple folk. Yet I wished that for this hour I could swell into someone of importance to do you credit. I would that I could put into your hands a staff. I cannot provide you with that staff for your journey, but perhaps I can tell you a little about it, how to use it and lose it and find it again and cling to it more than ever. You shall cut it, so it is ordained, every one of you for yourself. And its name is courage. You should use it in the great fight that seems to me to be coming between youth and their betters. By youth meaning, of course, you, and by your betters, us. I want you to take up this position, that youth have for too long left exclusively in our hands decisions in national matters that are more vital to them than to us. Things about the next war, for instance, and why the last one ever had a beginning. I use the word fight because it must, I think, begin with a challenge. For the aim is the reverse of antagonism. It is partnership. I want you to hold that the time has arrived for youth to demand partnership and to demand it courageously. If you prefer to leave things as they are, we shall probably fail you again. But if you must be in the struggle, never ascribe to an opponent motives meaner than your own. There may be students here today who have decided to go in for immortality and would like to know an easy way of accomplishing it. That is a way, but not so easy as you might think. Go through life without ever ascribing to your opponents motives meaner than your own. Nothing so lowers the moral currency. Give it up and be great. Another sure way to fame is to know what you mean. It is a solemn thought that almost no one, if he is truly eminent, knows what he means. Look at the great ones of the earth, the politicians. We do not discuss what they say, but what they may have meant when they said it. In 1922, we are all wondering, and so are they, what they meant in 1914 and afterwards. First World War. They are publishing books trying to find out. The men of action as well as the men of words. The explanation seems to be just that it is so difficult to know what you mean, especially when you have become a swell. Gone forever is simplicity. Doubts breed suspicions, a dangerous air. Sound familiar? Science is the surest means of teaching you how to know what you mean. Courage is the thing. All goes if courage goes. Be not merely courageous, but light-hearted. You must cultivate this light-heartedness if you are to hang your betters on your watch chains. Yet light-heartedness is not forever and a day. At its best, it is the companion of innocence, and when innocence goes, as go it must, they soon trip off together. But courage comes all the way. Despite the imperfections of your betters, we leave you a great inheritance, for which others will one day hold you to account. Courage, my children, and greet the unseen with a cheer. That's a great message for then, and I think a great message for now. Greet the unseen, the future, my friends, with a cheer and with courage. Know what you mean. Never ascribe to an opponent motives meaner than your own. And go forward in a spirit of partnership. A partnership of flawed elders and callow youths. Of conservatives and progressives. Keeping us all connected to make a difference. Because it's communication and connection that allows difference to be made. With all the realism and tough-mindedness that we can muster, with intellectual integrity, social relevance, amplitude of perspective, and the spirit of true liberation, let us go out into the world and create conditions that will bend this complex world again toward justice. Amen? Amen.
All right, now I invite Monica to come up and extinguish the chalice as we speak our closing words together, which are printed in your order of service. Go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all beings.
And may you do all that remembering the great possibilities for love and justice in times such as this.